Good morning. Welcome to ChessWire. I'm your host, Adam Carter, with your morning news. Today is Saturday, September 3rd, 2022. Carlsen beats Nepo at the Sinkfield Cup, Kasparov versus Deep Blue 25 years later, and the 10 best chess players of all time, all today on ChessWire. Now, let's get to your headlines. 25 years later, Deep Blue versus Kasparov. Last week, BBC4 brought together a group of personalities that, 25 years ago, were part of the epic struggle between the reigning world champion and million-dollar computer built by IBM. The broadcast reunited the chess masters and AI pioneers who went into battle at the time to test the limits of human artificial intelligence. You can listen to the 42-minute discussion and read excerpts. Kasparov versus Deep Blue. BBC4, the British free-to-air television channel, hosted a discussion as part of their reunion series. The Battle of Man versus the Machine took place in New York 25 years ago. IBM had proposed a 6-game match, which was held in a hushed room, while a packed audience watched it broadcast on large screen a few floors below. Every move was streamed online, threatening to crash a fledgling internet. Over the tense 9 days, the mood turned from anticipation to suspicion to bewilderment. Not only would the world of chess never be the same again, but the balance of power between humans and computers seemed to have shifted irrevocably. Was it the dawning of a new age? And I believe that it really was at this time, but there's another documentary about Deep Blue and the Kasparov match, and Garry was very, very upset. He contested that the computer had played like a computer the first couple of matches, but then all of a sudden started playing like a human. And was this a learning neural net? And so it had learned all of a sudden how to play like a human? Well, Kasparov was concerned that they had Anatoly Karpov up in the room with the computer helping it out. We'll get back to this, though. In the BBC4 broadcast, Kirsty Wark reunites the chess masters and AI pioneers who went into battle to test the limits of human and artificial intelligence. Frederick Fiegel was the advisor to Garry Kasparov, Malcolm Payne, Kasparov team member and IBM consultant, Murray Campbell, co-creator of Deep Blue, Joe Benjamin, IBM's official grandmaster consultant. I believe that he was a U.S. chess champion. Maurice Ashley, grandmaster, author, and commentator who covered the big match. Steve Levy, editor-at-large at Wired magazine, who scooped the front cover for Newsweek. Machinelike Efficiency by Carlsen to beat Nepo. This is by FIDE Master Chanson64. The 2022 Sinkfield Cup came off to a good start with 1 win and 4 draws. The win came courtesy of world champion Magnus Carlsen, who, in a conceiving fashion, took down the recent winner of the 2022 Candidates Tournament, GM Ian Nepo. With other games concluding in draws, the reigning world champion has taken the early lead in the year's event. How to watch the Sinkfield Cup, you can watch it on this page, which is part of our live streaming platform. Carlsen, Nepo, and the first classical game between the combatants in last year's World Championship match, since Carlsen announced that he will not defend his title against the winner of the Candidates Tournament. The Norwegian champion was clearly determined to demonstrate to all of the doubters that Nepo version 22.0 is no more a threat than Nepo version 21.0 was. And I am not surprised by this whatsoever. I just don't think that he wants to go into... I just don't think that Carlsen wants to go into this match that's going to take a long time, 6 months preparation, just to beat somebody he knows he can beat and has beaten before. It's just not worth his time. In a quiet Queen's Gambit decline, Carlsen quickly allowed an exchange of queens, and while retaining the bishop pair, the engines were not exactly impressed by Carlsen's opening choices, but they did not have the mindset of the world champion, who just wanted a playable position where he could squeeze his opponent and allow him to make mistakes. As it turned out, Carlsen asserted the kind of dominating play that propelled him to the world #1 spot, making the win against the current world #3 look rather easy. The best 10 chess players of all time, chess.com, this one by Colin Stapazinski. Our beloved game of chess has had many legends, world champions, challengers, world-class players, and grandmasters. The games of these masters delight, inspire, and teach us the way of the royal game. It is common to discuss the greatest players of all time in chess circles, but these discussions always beg the singular question, who is the best of all time? Here are the top 10 best chess players. Honorable mentions, Paul Morphy. See, I think that Paul Morphy was probably the greatest chess player of all time. That's my opinion. No computers, very limited resources. The guy was just a massive monster. Paul Morphy was the embodiment of the romantic attacking chess, the strongest player of the 1850s, and the best player of the entire 19th century. There was no official world champion title during his era, but he was light years ahead of his competition and is recognized as an unofficial world champion. Tigran Petrosian, I don't know too much about Tigran. Tigran Petrosian, or Iron Tigran, was the world champion during 63 to 69 and for a time Soviet champion. Undefeated the entire year leading to his world championship title in 62, he was known for his defensive prowess and his famous exchange sacrifices. According to DM Daniel Narodowski, he was one of the first elite players with a truly universal style. Vishwanathan Anand. GM Vishwanathan Anand, and the FIDE World Champion from 2000-2002, and the 15th Undisputed Champion from 2007 to 2013, he lost the Professional Chess Association PCA World Championship match against GM Garry Kasparov in 1995 and lost to GM Anatoly Karpov in the FIDE World Championship match in 1998 on tiebreaks before winning the FIDE World Championship in 2000. Number 10. Alexander Alkine was the fourth official world champion and held the title from 1927 to 1946, with an exception during 1935 to 37. He was a brilliant and well-rounded player with a special ability for combinational play in complex positions. He also taught the chess world that rules and principles can be broken based on concrete analysis of the specific and unique position. Mikhail Tal. Now, Mikhail is one of my favorite players, just because of his wild ability to spot tactics and sacrifices. Just a lot of fun to look at his games, analyze them. Mikhail Tal, also known as the Magician from Riga, was the 8th official world champion. He defeated Botvinic in 1960 to earn the crown at the age of 23 and a half, becoming the youngest world champion in history at the time, although this record was broken by both Kasparov and Carlsen. Known for his brilliant and unique attacking style, Tal's approach to the game has been an inspiration for attacking players for decades, me included. One of his famous bone-chilling quotes is, "You must take your opponent into a deep, dark forest where 2 + 2 = 5, and the path leading out is only wide enough for one." Emanuel Lasker. Emanuel Lasker was the second official world champion and held his title for 27 years. His reign from 1894 to 1921 is the longest of any world chess champion, and his playing career lasted 5 decades. Lasker defeated the first official world champion, William Steins, in 1894, and he defended his title 5 times against a host of world-class contenders, including Frank Marshall, Singbert Tarasch, David Janowski, and Karl Schlettker. 7. Vladimir Kramnik. GM Vladimir Kramnik was world champion from 2000 to 2007. He became the classical world champion by dethroning the legendary Kasparov in 2000. Defended his title in 2004 against GM Peter Leko, and in 2006 faced the FIDE world champion Topalov in a title unification match. Kramnik defeated Topalov to become the first undisputed world champion since Kasparov in 1993. At his peak, Kramnik's game had absolutely no weak points. He could do it all. He was known for his fantastic in-game play and his clean, tenacious, and positional style. Kramnik is considered one of the most difficult players to defeat in the history of the game. Macau Botvinic. GM Macau Botvinic is known as the father of the Soviet chess school. The sixth world champion reigned from 1948 to 1963 with 2 brief intermissions and was a top player for over 30 years. Botvinic's style was dictated by iron, logic, and flexibility. Although he was extremely talented with methodical and strategical planning, his flexible style allowed him to adapt to all different types of playing styles. He became world champion in 1948, defended his title against GM David Bronstein in 1951, and defeated GM Yasli Simslov in 1954. In 1957, Simslov defeated Botvinic, who won their rematch the following year. At that time, the world champion had the right to a rematch if they lost the title. In 1960, Botvinic was defeated by Tal, but history repeated itself as Botvinic won their rematch in 1961. Number 5, Anatoly Karpov. GM Anatoly Karpov was the 12th world champion and reigned from 1975 to 1985, while also being the FIDE world champion from 1993 to 1999. Karpov was an exceptionally well-rounded player, but his specialty was positional binds, prophylactic play, and wonderful in-game technique. Karpov became world champion by default when Fischer withdrew from their 1975 match because of his demands weren't met. Karpov defended his crown by defeating VM Viktor Korchnoi in 1978 and again in 1981. In 1984, Karpov would have his first meeting with Kasparov, and the chess world was changed forever. In the first 5 matches between the 2 legendary titans, the match was called early with Karpov leading 5 wins, 3 losses, and 40 draws. In 1985, Kasparov defeated Karpov and claimed the chess crown. They played again in 1986, 1987, and 1990, and when their matches were concluded, their lifetime record in world championship matches was 19 wins for Karpov, 21 wins for Kasparov, and 104 draws. In 1993, Kasparov broke away from FIDE, creating the PCA, and Karpov became the FIDE world champion. Karpov defended his FIDE world champion title by defeating GM Jan Timman in 1993, GM Gadakamsky in 1996, and Anand in 1998 on tiebreaks. Karpov refused to play in the 1999 FIDE world champion tournament after FIDE changed their rules. Number 4. Jose Rauru Capablanca. Jose Rauru Capablanca was the 3rd official world champion and possibly the most talented chess player ever to play the game. From 1916 through 1924, he amassed a tournament record of 40 wins and 23 draws, an unprecedented feat at the time and still a historical significant achievement. Capablanca's talent and skill were unmatched during his 8-year period. Capablanca became world champion by defeating the legendary Lasker in 1921. Many believe that Capablanca would have defeated Lasker had he been given the chance before 1921, and many believe that he would have reclaimed the title had he been given the opportunity for a rematch with Alkine. Unfortunately for Capablanca, his peaking playing time happened both during and between World War I and World War II. Number 3, Bobby Fischer. GM Bobby Fischer was the 11th official world champion as well as the first and only American world champion. He is considered by many to be the most famous chess player ever. From 1970 to 71, Fischer won 20 consecutive games against world-class opposition, an unprecedented and mind-boggling achievement that most likely will never be equaled. This feat is counted among the 7 most amazing chess records. In 1972, Fischer defeated Spassky in the match of the century and was crowned world champion. Despite starting the match with a 0-2 score after throwing away game 1 in a completely equal endgame and not even showing up for game 2, Fischer's dismantling of the Soviet chess empire from 1970 to 1972 during the midst of the Cold War is considered one of the greatest individual performances of all time. Number 2. Now this is shocking. Magnus Carlsen being number 2. I would have considered him number 1, but they've got Garry Kasparov as number 1. So let's see if they give any reasoning for Magnus being in the 2 spot here. GM Magnus Carlsen is the reigning world champion for all 3 time controls, standard, rapid, and blitz. In 2009, he became the youngest player in history to reach the 2800 rating threshold, and on April 21st, 2014, he reached his peak rating and the highest rating ever at 2889. Carlsen has been the number 1 ranked player since 2011 and has been dominating the game ever since. As of February 2020, Carlsen has been on a 120-game undefeated streak in standard time controls, another record for the world champion. His resume is already more than enough to be considered number 2 on this list of the best players of all time, but Carlsen is only 29 years old and may not have reached his peak playing strength. Carlsen became the world champion by defeating Anand in 2013, just before turning 23 years old, the second youngest world champion ever, only behind Kasparov. He has successfully defended his title 3 times. In 2014, Carlsen won the match against Anand. In 2016, he defeated GM Sergei Karjakin, and in 2018 defeated GM Fabiano Caruana. Carlsen himself does not believe he has earned the number 1 spot on the list. According to an interview in January 2020, Carlsen states, Kasparov had 20 years uninterrupted as the world number 1. He must be considered as the best in history, but I feel that time is on my side. I'm not 30 yet, and if I were to be considered the best in history at 30, I would have had to start dominating at 10 years old. So there you have it, right from the mouth of babes. Number 1, GM Garry Kasparov is the 13th world champion and held the title from 1985 to 2000. He first reached the number 1 ranking in 1984, with a few minor exceptions, remained the number 1 player in the world until 2006. Kasparov dominated the chess world for over 20 years. Kasparov reached his peak rating of 2856 on March 3rd, 2000. At the time, an unprecedented number and a record that wasn't broken until Carlsen surpassed it. In 1985, Kasparov defeated Karpov to become the youngest world champion ever at the age of roughly 22 and a half. He defended the world championship title against Karpov on 3 consecutive occasions in 1986, 1987, and 1990. In 1993, he broke away from FIDE and started the PCA. This break would create 2 different world championships until the reunification match between Kramnik and Topalov in 2006. Kasparov defended his title by defeating GM Nigel Short in 1993 and successfully defended his title again by defeating Anand in 1995. Kasparov and Lasker are the only 2 world champions to defend their titles successfully 5 times. In 2000, Kramnik defeated Kasparov, ending the reign of the best player of all time as world champion. However, Kasparov would continue playing and winning tournaments until his retirement in 2005. He left the game as the number 1 player in the world. There you have it, your top 10 chess players of all time. Thank you for watching or listening to ChessWire. Have a good one.